All right, we are live. Hey everyone. It's been a
Hello.
while. But we are back. the
Yes, yes,
team. The team is back
yes.
to finish out Wayward Lives,
Mhm.
Beautiful Experiments with Book 3. I'm Dr. Nicole Carter,
And I'm Dr. Donnesha Blake.
and we will just encourage you to go out and get the syllabus for this book and follow along, ask questions. Let us know your thoughts about the book, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Um,
So, oh, go ahead.
oh, no. I was just saying, all right.
All right. So, the first section that we're actually going through for book 3 is Wayward, a short entry on the possible. So,
Hmm.
and by the way, it's important to point out that Dr. Blake here is the one who wrote the syllabus, so make sure you support. Um, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
so um, so this entry is said to be similar to Alice Walker's outline of the term womanism. If you haven't read it, and I actually think did we do it as part of this group?
Yeah, we did like a
We
long
did.
time ago.
Okay, so it's similar to one of the first sections in Search of Our Mother's Gardens, where there's a definition and description of womanism there, and so but the author of this text reviews the term wayward and waywardness. So the first question related to that is why do you think she offers this definition at this particular point in the book?
Yeah. I wrote that question because I was struck by the fact that she left it in book 3, especially because you know, usually when you're trying to like set out like some kind of theory or um, analysis or whatever, you have like that kind of definition at the beginning. And so um, for me, I don't know why she did it. I know that I could say probably some comments on why I think she might have just included it in general, which is like, I think it is a part of like a Black feminist praxis of naming and defining and making really clear all the different ways. Oh, I see a cat. um,
Always.
all of the different like you know ways that we can understand it so that we're not just, I guess, pigeonholed into thinking of the wayward in really pathological terms. um so that's what I got from it.
And I mean, I'll just add, like, related to this point in the book,
Hmm.
I think she has described what other people might see as like women being wayward throughout the book, and she's tried to kind of um, counter that narrative. And
Hmm.
so, in countering that narrative, then um, she's set up like a new definition, and so then it comes
Yeah.
after what
Yeah.
she has provided for us.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Because we've
that's
kind of laid out different things, and now we're kind of wrapping up the book, and this is kind of where we get to, I think, if we even think of it as like a final act or something like that. So
yeah, and even at this point, then because wayward in the traditional sense could have even been Dubois that was described because of his
mm,
mentality about
yeah,
people and his thinking, and so
right.
um, the traditional definition could have described something problematic, and she's giving us this new definition of what it means to be wayward and a beautiful experiment as
Mm,
Black women
right.
navigating these places. So,
Yeah. So
so the other question asks, what worlds, theories, and practices are made possible when we engage with the wayward.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that for me, I think she uses like a lot of terminology about like opening the way, and like I think that when we consider Black women's history, Black girl history, it allows us to see more than what we've, you know, historically been taught to see. And it helps us do a process of unlearning. And so um, I think that, you know, we can't just tell stories of the exceptional Black women and girls. Like, we have to, you know, talk about the mundane, talk about the wayward, the queer, whatever, um, because I think that's a more complete, if you will, if anything could ever be complete, it's more complete when you are able to see. So I think that that is um, what what happens when we engage the wayward.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and then we're asked to challenge and be uncomfortable because I think sometimes I think when we read, especially from a Western lens, we like to see linearity. And I think that what Wayward does is say, like, these are not, you know, linear paths and progressive paths to some kind of, you know, outcome. But the beauty is in that, like, these are really messy stories, and that allows us to appreciate like our own histories are pretty messy too. If you even, you know, go and ask somebody in your family, like, you know, about a grandma or aunt, you might get a story that you weren't expecting if you remove the filter of respectability, you know. So
I was just about to say that. Like, so I feel like this defining wayward and thinking of like theories and things like that. So then it provides us with the opportunity to really compare, like
mhm,
compare, but also put waywardness and this and how she's describing and defining it here in conversation with respectability.
mhm,
And so I think that's important because sometimes we don't have the words, we have the thoughts to like think like, so there's something else that's going on.
mhm,
And so now she provides us with that word to
yeah,
use
yeah,
and like a theory of exploration, um and like making ways,
mhm,
other than what has been dictated for us or to us.
right,
So
yeah.
um so the next question asks, how does this entry help you to understand the experiments and freedom captured in book 3 and throughout the book?
Yes. Mm. Um, to me, I think it allows us to signal all the ways in which Black girls and women and queer folks have been um, taking moments, because I think sometimes like freedom is seen as like a very finite kind of thing. It's like when we get there, we're gonna be free. And I think a lot of what I see in Black feminist thought in this moment is saying that we're always playing with what freedom looks like as we're trying to create this sort of larger meaning of freedom. So that something like, you know, I was just on Instagram and I saw a couple of posts about from the Nat Ministry about rest, right?
Yeah.
And just like rest as a radical act, and that being something in the big in the time in the frame of the day, right, in the grand scheme of things, it seems very small, but it is a practice in freedom. And just every day, those little things that we do, right, you know, cruising, you know, strolling, seeking, rambling, roving, like, you know, it's just these are the times where people are creating those moments of liberation. And so it moves us out of this space. What I really see her doing is moving us out of this space of exceptionalism and really getting us to see like the beauty in the mundane, the beauty in everyday things, so that we don't set up this idea that our research or our care for Black women has to always be about who is more spectacular, you know?
Yeah. I also see, I don't know, just thinking of that particular question, and I guess seeing freedom as what you were mentioning, like freedom as like not a place, but process,
Hmm.
and like an everyday practice.
Yeah.
So we engage in it every single day by even if it could be the smallest thing,
Hmm.
but it's a or practice of freedom.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. That's
And it gets us ready, I think, for like, if you do feel like, you know, freedom is like this sort of utopia, but like I think it's, you know, when it's talk about experimentation, like I think about like how sometimes people experiment with recipes or something like that, and it's like getting ready. So it's like, how do you know what freedom looks like if you've never done something to be free, you know, in smaller ways? And so that's what I see it also doing.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the next question asks, well, ask several questions. So, how can claiming the concept of waywardness assist us in understanding contemporary Black girls and women? And what new vocabularies for living today are we asked to develop when centering righteous Black girls, troublesome women, and queer radicals of the early 20th century?
Hmm. Yeah. um I think we are asked to see like you know, this book I read by Savannah Shange. She's an anthropologist, and she was talking about in her book, Progressive Dystopias, about like willful defiance, and how Black girls sometimes, like willful defiance used to be like a penal law in California that um, that would allow for girls to be, or just students to be suspended because they were being willfully defiant, meaning like not participating in, you know, whatever the activity was in school. And those were ways to penalize Black girls. And it was disproportionately affecting and being applied to Black girls. And to me, it helps us to ask questions like, instead of reading disengagement um, as a type of deviance or something that's negative, to really ask more questions about like, why is this person maybe disengaging from, you know, from this meeting or from this activity or whatever, like, instead of just like deciding, you know, like for example with me, my supervisor is convinced that I am disengaged, right? And like he just he's like, you're just not engaged. And I'm like looking at it, sitting in meetings like, but instead of like making that, instead of asking me like why, and and figuring out like the answer is that perhaps it's some bullshit happening in the room, like you decide that I'm just going to say you're disengaged, and then that be the narrative that I tell you. And
Mhm.
we do that so much to Black girls and Black women. And so if anything, I think that what a theory of waywardness does is pushes us to go beyond just what respectability, what white supremacy tells us we need to do to read us, you know.
Yeah. And I'm just looking through, I was going back through some of the sections in this book, this
Hmm.
particular book. with book three. And thinking about that, and also going back to book one when it reviewed like girls and photographs and how they did little things like small things to
Mhm.
disrupt like the violence that was
Mhm.
occurring,
Mhm.
or voyeurism that was happening, the
Yeah.
gaze, right? And so like we're always like engaging in, well, not always, but it is like a major disruption when we decide to behave in a way that other people don't see as respectable. And
Exactly.
so um and I think I the example that you're giving of um black girls being penalized for certain actually just by like doing nothing,
Mhm.
right? Or even like there's an article, it's like older, but it's called Loud Black Girls, those loud black
Mhm.
girls. And even though it's older, it still applies, like black girls being penalized simply for speaking,
Yeah.
like because the way some oftentimes the way that they speak is like passion,
Mhm.
right? Like, and so but that
Yes.
goes against the norm, and so
Mhm.
they get penalized for not speaking,
Mhm.
because that's a disruption, because
Right.
they're not speaking when someone else is telling
Tell.
them,
Yep.
tell them to. And so but all of these things from this text are wayward acts to me,
Mhm.
like wayward acts that lead to freedom.
Yeah.
But
Right.
in the world around us, it is not
Mhm.
whatsoever. And I
Right.
feel like I feel you at work with that, that example. But I'm gonna leave it at that.
I'm just like, I don't even care no more. Like, if you see it, you see it. Okay. But yeah, it's just that there was something else I was gonna say. But yeah, yeah, I won't, if I think about it, I'll bring it back up.
Okay. So the next section is actually the anarchy of color girls assembled in a righteous manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this particular text, we explore the life of Esther Brown. Speaking of work and
Mm-hmm.
saying, yeah, I'm not doing this no more. And so it talks about laws, vagrancy laws, different laws related to social control that have been placed upon Black women and girls, um, to behave in a particular way and to continue notions of servitude in their lives. So, um, and we have a chat. I can't really see it on that thing. Yeah. So, a Facebook user said, I enjoyed how women in this book use their labor as an act of rebellion, not engaging in domestic labor and carving out another path. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being wayward.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first question from this particular section in book three asks, how do you think the anti assembly laws, not gathering, made Black women and girls more vulnerable to vagrancy laws? In what ways did these laws work together to intensify the criminalization of Black girls and women?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So when you have like, I really enjoyed this chapter because it was so. Um, I think that when we talk about mass incarceration from a historical perspective, and this is me having very limited knowledge, but I think sometimes we frame it around men, like going like mass incarceration of men, and like even when we talk about black codes and like chain gangs and all of that, it tends to be that, and it's like simultaneously black girls and women are being kind of pushed through um, 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 prisons and jails too. And so but to this question, when you can't gather and simultaneously you can't be seen alone, right? So you can't win. And so I think that when we think about these ways that laws are designed, they're not designed to ever make sense.
ever.
There's always contradictions in all of them. And so what I was noticing when I wrote that question was like, wow, like you could be by yourself and still get caught up, or you could be with a group of people and still get caught up. And all of those serve this purpose of pushing Black girls and Black women into the prison system and really ultimately serving this capitalist function, which is to have this uh, um, uh, low cost or no cost labor. So, um, yeah.
Yeah. And then I think of the I guess the lineage or history of violence then that continues. So like, you know, one of the things that happens when we talk about things like enslavement is we also don't talk about black girls during
Hmm.
that time, or black girls or women. Like we have I think started to,
Yeah.
but not as much as we talk about the experiences of black men and boys. And
Yeah.
sometimes we don't talk about boys either. It's usually just
Exactly.
men.
Yes.
Um,
That's right.
and that can be, I don't know, we could talk about adultification as it relates to that
Hmm.
too, because some
Hmm.
black men were actually boys, but they were
Yeah.
described to be men. But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but even, and so like one of the things that doesn't come up then is that we don't talk about rape and, you know, like forced reproduction. And then we think about
Hmm.
this and like this pigeonholing into the ability to have to like stay like basically you become a criminal and you weren't a criminal. Like you
Hmm.
aren't a criminal, but these laws made it so that you are.
Right.
And now not only are you uh, a criminal, you're also traumatized because of the
Hmm.
violence that then takes place within prison systems as
Right.
well. And so it's just like a cycle and a continuation of like ideas of hypervisibility and invisibility at the same time.
Hmm.
So very interesting.
Yeah. It's
Um, so go ahead. Sorry.
It says on page 236, I pointed out that it says what the law designated as crime were the forms of life created by young black women in the city, the modes of intimacy, affiliation being fashion, the refusal to labor, the ordinary forms of gathering and assembly, the practices of subsistence and making do were under surveillance and targeted not only by the police, but also by the sociologists and reformers who gathered the information and made the case against them, forging their lives into tragic biographies of crime and pathology. Read, okay? Read them.
And then
So,
like it's also like um a testimony to the fact that even then and it continues now, like people don't like to see black joy. They don't like to
mm-mm,
see black women joyful, black
no.
girls seeking and being in joy and being of
Mhm.
joy. And so what happens when they gather, right? Like when they were gathering, that was a joyful, those are joyful moments. I mean, they
Exactly.
were not created to just simply be domestic workers. Like that is not,
Mhm.
right? Their purpose, they had found a larger purpose and then you criminalize it because you
Right.
don't want to see joy
Yep.
because you a
Joy.
hater. Right?
Like just existing. Like, I was just thinking about I mean, I think this has happened a couple of times where black girls selling like lemonade and they're getting criminalized because they didn't get a permit. Like just just any and everything, like that will make it so that you can't exist in the world just as you
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Um, sorry. Oh yeah. So, again, a Facebook user stated, I still see the impact of the anti-assembly law today. Yes,
Absolutely.
oh my goodness, particularly in urban spaces,
Hmm.
quote unquote inner cities, at work whenever there are two plus black people gathered, those gather often disperse quickly as to not raise eyebrows. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, like just experiences from growing up in Detroit, like it was like I have seen, and again, it was actually targeted in that neighborhood towards young black boys.
Mm.
However, I also have seen like or heard how people have depicted young black girls who hung out together. Like, what are
Hmm.
y'all doing? What y'all like?
What y'all getting
Y'all must be
into?
up to
What?
something.
Yep. Yep.
Like, why we can't just exist? Like, we're
Mhm.
existing. This is
Yeah.
joyful. We're walking to the store. We
Listen,
can't.
I remember strolling just around the block with me and my friend. Like we wasn't doing nothing, but we was walking around the block, just taking up time. Like, what else we gonna do? My mama won't let me back in the house. Like,
Like,
you
you mean to
know.
tell me we can't exercise? We can't get a little
Right.
leg work
But
in?
then when we don't exercise, you got all these different. Oh, y'all don't take care of y'all stuff. Like, we can't win. We can't win for trying.
Yeah.
And it's funny, even like it's funny, but it's not funny. But we joke about even the stuff at work, like, girl, don't let them see, because they think we gonna be planning a revolution and all this kind of stuff. But those things are kind of rooted
That
out of
is
trauma.
a thing. That is connected
Yeah,
at work. Oh, you better not.
yeah.
Hold
Don't
on.
let
We
them
gotta
see
go.
you.
We
And
gotta go off campus for a second.
right, exactly. Yes, yes, yeah. And it's crazy, and it's just like, you know, um, even some part of me had a reservation. We just got a new black woman who is working there. And I was a little hesitant because I'm like, I don't know. Like, is she gonna feel like she needs to, be in her own lane or whatever? Because I don't want people to feel like, well, us black girls, even though I do feel that way, I'm like, us black girls got to stick together. But, like, not really knowing if that's the move, or if that's something because of the way it would be perceived, or people think we're conspiring against the school or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, the next question asks about current modern day vagrancy,
Mhm.
assembly, and tenement laws that shape how black women and girls exist in public and private space. I think we were kind of talking about it. They're not actual like laws, but they're like
This,
that these are things that exist, like that people
yeah.
are always surveilling and watching you.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Um, how has the spirit of these laws been weaponized by people who are not agents of the state, like police officers, but act on behalf of the state, Lord?
yeah. I mean, that example about the girls, or girl, I don't know how many times, with the even just the lemonade stand, right? Like, or barbecue. Like, we can talk about Amy Cooper, like all of these different examples of, you know, white women in particular, but just white folks, you know,
That's it. The Karens.
just
Karen.
Karen's
The Karens.
just
That's the
disrupting,
Karens.
just disrupting us in our flow and doing what we do, and
Yeah.
trying to. And I think it's really specific. I think that also the way that the sentiment of those laws, like, you don't have a permit or you don't have permission to exist in space, like, those things get weaponized in order to justify, oh, I'm concerned, or I'm you know trying to do my civil duty of protecting this property, right? So, um, that's kind of what was on my mind in thinking about that question.
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, what happens is it's not just assembly. Like, it's not just like being around other girls. or women. It's being by yourself in a space
Oh
that
yeah.
people feel like you shouldn't exist in. So,
Yep.
like particular colleges or college period.
Yep. People being like, do you work here? Or like,
After
you
you
know,
said like, "Hello, I'm Dr. Carter. I came to pick up a."
they be like, oh,
Oh, can I see your ID? Oh, you didn't just ask the
really?
other person for ID.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Yep. So,
I had another
um,
one about being alone and just, oh, in the grocery store, like people following you around or being
oh
way
my
too
God.
interested in helping you. And it's like, I was just giving this example the other day. Like one time my mom went to the grocery store. Now, the grocery store is one of those places where it's like you go there pretty often, so you don't need help. Like, unless you're looking for something specific and then you might ask, but like you just going in, my mama just like, okay, I'm about to pick up my little stuff. And, all of a sudden people like, can we help you? And it's like, no, because I'm just here picking up my groceries. Like, so it's a
Yeah, I
mess.
don't. I actually have stopped responding to. I don't know what that is. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
I maybe we can remove it. But,
I just blocked that. Mhm.
okay. But I think I have stopped responding just like that because I noticed that um some people do it at it's like certain times, and it's like I'm sure you've seen me in this store before, and you
Mhm.
keep asking me the same like, "Do you need help with something?" No, I actually know exactly where I'm going. Thanks.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. Please.
yeah,
Like, I want to be like, do you work on commission? Like,
no,
because
you don't.
you hounded me
This
like you do.
Walgreens, boo. You ain't getting no extra money, please.
So leave me alone. Leave me alone. But then when nobody asks me for help or if I need help, I'm like, see, this place is racist. I be going
I've
off.
been waiting for no.
They gonna come in, they ain't even gonna greet me. Like I be all mad. So you can't get it right with me. But
So the next question is why is the refusal of shame deemed a threat to agents of the state, social workers, police? Who benefits from black girls and women's shame? What about Esther Brown and other wayward women and girls, threatened reformers, and people invested in racial uplift?
yeah, yeah. I mean, refusing to not be ashamed, child. Shame is a powerful tool of white supremacy. And if you decide that you are going to live your life and be free and be a free spirit, that is, it's even, I think for some people, that's even worse than, you know, doing it and just doing it in the dark. You know what I'm saying? Like some people are like, well, if you just do it and don't tell nobody, but if you have the audacity to be like,
That's what it is, the audacity. They don't like that
they
you
don't like
have.
that. Hmm.
Mm-mm. I mean, and I think actually, well, and it's still a tool of white supremacy, but it's like this tool that has been internalized. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what respectability is. Like you calling somebody out because they're able to say things that you would never say,
Hmm.
but they're just living their life freely. And so you're upset that they're able to be so free
Yeah.
when you're so limited. And
Right.
it's like that's more about you than me. I don't know. But
Exactly.
yeah,
Because the thing about shame is it keeps people out, like it keeps people out of the spotlight, and people don't. I think that people who are invested both in white supremacy and racial uplift, this respectability, it it puts too much focus, I think, on trying to it puts too much focus on and it's an aversion or a diversion from the mission. So existing in the dark and doing all the dirt in the dark or in the closet or whatever, those are the things like if yeah, it can exist and it doesn't disrupt because nobody's able to say, well, I see them over there and they look like they having fun. So what's that
mhm,
about? And like people hate that because they're like, we don't want people to know that this is all a scam.
yeah.
So yeah, that social control piece.
Okay, so let me see. We have two more sections. I think we actually have plenty of time to get through
Oh
this.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
um, the next section that we are going through is Riot and Refrain. And so in this section, um, it goes through again. I think it's a continuation of some of these laws
Yeah.
that we were talking about,
Yep.
and reformatories.
Mm-hmm.
And so and then again, black girls and women's the different type of resistance that have been enacted by black girls and women. So
Mm-hmm.
the first question asks, says Aaron Perkins, Eva Perkins' husband, waits for her to serve her sentence. Why do you think people are surprised that men wait for incarcerated women to be released? What have we been socialized to think of men who wait? And how is that different from what we expect from women? Oh Lord,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, oh, go ahead.
no, go for it. You got thoughts, I feel.
I just feel like we have been social like a man who wait is seen as like basically like a sucker. Like what are
Yeah.
you waiting for? Like you have no other life, you don't have anything going for yourself. So of course you would wait.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's seen as deemed a problem. But on the other side of that, women are expected to wait. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
expected to like stand by the like people who have been incarcerated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and also we're supposed to be forgiving, and just kind of pick up where we left off. And it's not the
Yep.
same
Yep.
on the other end of that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say. But
The when I was writing that, I was just thinking about Papoose and Remy Ma and how like people used to like really like drag Papoose for waiting for Remy and were almost unconvinced that he would be that committed to her. And I think that if it were the opposite, people would be, wouldn't even question.
we saw an opposite Gucci,
Mhm.
and I don't even remember. I forgot her name,
Keisha
but
Kador.
yeah,
Mhm.
Gucci.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Everybody
Yep.
praised her. He even praised. Like once he got out, like basically, like I'm taking care of you for the rest of your life,
Right.
like because you waited. But Remy,
Nah.
it's like people still dogging Papoose out for that. Like
Mhm.
he just really he has fallen off the like his
Yeah.
cool is gone.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like
Like it was definitely like you even the way that even love and hip hop I feel like kind of even framed him in a way that was like he lost his masculinity, like it just felt like every conversation or everything was all about him being subservient and submissive, and how that was framed as something that made him lose his edge. And I just felt like we do not talk about women who wait for their man, to get out in that same way. And it really does point to um, a disconnect. So
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so the next question asks, how did or does the state benefit from the reform movement of queer folks, black women and girls, and how did the reformatory system continue to support the capitalist system?
Hmm. Before I get into answering that one, I really am interested in that queer folks, because I really did not see much of the way that we might have seen folks who were like, obviously I don't think we had the language, the language of queerness, um or the word queer as a kind of reclamation term to understand that. But I do wonder how they interacted, and I don't think and maybe it was in the chapters that we didn't cover, but I didn't necessarily see how they interacted with the state um in prisons and things like that, or like, what were, you know um and even thinking about trans, or like people who would be today considered trans, like what was their experience in this system, and how were they gendered, or we hear so many examples of trans women, particularly trans Black women, being misgendered and then put into prisons or jails that are um in a more in alignment with their gender assigned at birth. And so,
Mhm.
like, I would be curious in knowing, like, what was that like, or if that was ever, I know it was a part of it, but I would like to know that history as well.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I do feel like so queerness exists. It's everywhere, right? Like it's all
Mhm.
queerness is here, therefore in these spaces it also existed. And so but it's still extremely like taboo to talk about, even though
Mhm.
like people like to act like things have advanced. Like when system like social systems maintain like the same, like they uphold these same standards, then we have not advanced that far. And so
Right.
the prison system is one of those places. And trans
Mhm.
women, I even think about, I'm going back to Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
um, and even the fact that there existed a trans woman in that setting,
Yeah.
um, which does not happen. And I think she
Mhm.
spoke out about that anyway, about the reality that that does not happen
Right.
usually.
Yeah.
And so, but just like these are like there are so many stories, and like, and not stories like fictional, but stories like that need to
Mhm.
be told still,
Yeah.
so that we can learn about these things. I feel like this your next somebody next book.
I was like, "Wait a minute, is this a new research project?"
Yes. Woo!
I
I
I
was
was,
about to say
am
that.
I really starting a new project? Because I got
Come on, come
questions,
on, come on. Come with it. Yes,
girl.
I think it
So,
is.
yes, yes, let me write a note to myself, because sometimes I really do struggle. I'm like, "What questions do I have?" These are the questions I
Mhm.
need to. But I think we mentioned earlier about the reformatory system being like this way of normalizing girl, like, and really preparing them. Like, these were kind of like servitude mills. Like, they were just pumping out these people, these women, and to these homes, and these fan homes and families or whatever. And so, yeah, and it serves that because
Servitude, and like basically in teaching them to be servants, you're also teaching them to behave in a particular way. So it
yep,
reminds me of like the boarding schools that
yeah,
native and or indigenous folks endured, right? Like the same um like forced assimilation and indoctrination,
yep,
like continuously being in service to someone else, either just cognitively or like physically and cognitively. But
yeah, yeah. Because
yeah,
the more you can kind of beat people down to where they don't have any fight, it's like it not only allows for them to do the task at hand, but it allows for the system to exist and people to also feel like, well, you consented to it as well. Like, you are also a part of it. So
yeah, it's a
too
lot.
much. It's too
Yeah. So the next question asks, how were the uprisings in the Bedford Hills Rebecca Hall characterized by the media reporting on them? How do these reports resemble how uprisings are characterized in the media today?
Hmm. Yeah. So the I wouldn't even say the black. I don't know if they were all black, but the girls were rising up and they were refusing to be in this. And I just remember how they I can't remember what page it was on though, but it felt more like just how today we talk about like looting and what about tearing up y'all neighborhoods and all this, like we really, and I think that's the same type of rhetoric we use when we talk about that we're talking about that on special occasion, a day, a certain day. And so, it's just I think that tends to be even in our sometimes our best intentions. Like I went to Louisville a couple of months ago, and I just remember being so triggered because they were like, it's a little dead. We were in downtown Louisville. It's a little dead because of the Breonna Taylor riots. And like every time they said riots, it just made me cringe because I'm just like, oof, okay, all right, and um it just I think it's just a misrecognition of why people
Yeah,
protest, why people rise up and for social injustice.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, anytime to me that, again, going back to ideas of waywardness, anytime you're not upholding respectability, then people attempt to pigeonhole you and define what it is you're doing for themselves, because then they
Mhm.
can penalize you for it.
Yeah.
So rioting, that's right. You're not, and for them, like for folks who name things in this way, it's like you're not protesting. No,
Mhm.
that's not a protest. You're
Yes.
rioting. You're angry for no reason. But
Right.
the issue is that this anger, this pain, this humiliation, this degradation, all of these things, denigration, it has to go somewhere.
Mhm.
And it comes out in many forms, but
Mhm.
often in protest.
Yeah.
But using certain terms is always a way to like control people. So
Right. And to make them feel shame, right? Because it's like, oh, you're destroying this thing that you're supposed to love because you barely have it, right? Or like your community works so hard for it. And it's just like, it's stuff, it's property. But, you
yeah,
know, somebody has a quote, has a comment. Let's see if it's, I'll read it from the side. Ooh. Wait, hold on. I'll read it and then I'll put it up because it won't let me. Love this quote on 274. Maybe if they could find their way beyond this language of being a man and being a woman, this grammar of the human that regarded them both as monsters and deviants, and break free of a scheme never fashioned for them but imposed indifferently and cruelly, they might find their way to another kind of love and support, one capable of withstanding the daily assault of a world dead set against them. Ooh, yes. I'll put it
this
back
goes
up
back
on.
to, now I'm blanking on her an American grammar book. Like
Mm,
uh just the way that we define and label people and how that like continues to shape language shapes our
mhm,
ideas of who they are and who they can be.
mhm.
So what if, I guess, is what
Yeah,
is being asked. Um, so the next question, or the last question in this section, talks about specifically the uprising in the Rebecca Hall. And it asks, how does the uprising and the Rebecca Hall illustrate the theme of communion and solidarity in Black women communities?
Hmm. Yeah, this one, I think it provides a entry point into understanding how Black women organize another way. I think we know, from a lot of historical work that Black women organized in, clubs, club era women, and this was another way. They had to figure out when they were going to do it and how and what time and all of those things. And so to me, it's like, again, when we see if we kind of think about that framework of the Wayward, we're able to see, like, if we're studying organizing and the history of organizing, we have to include that into the narrative, because it is one of the ways that Black women resisted. And so, um and that they stood up for one another and
Yeah.
protected each other. So
Yeah, resistance looks like there are so many ways that Black folks, period, but Black women resisted subjugation, even like in domestic work,
mhm.
like poisoning, things like that. Like, I mean, I'm laughing right now, but it's just like it was a simple way to like
Yeah,
penalize someone from objectifying you.
y'all know
Um,
what's the name in the help with that shit. that
okay,
was that was it was like, okay, girl.
yeah. So, so many ways, but also, yeah, like I said, people like resistance can be joy. Like joy
Mhm.
can be a form of resistance. Like people coming together in communion. People don't like that. Like, what you
Mhm.
happy about? Life's supposed to be rough.
Right.
But
You whore.
yeah, like, but it could be rough and we could be happy that we are in community together.
Hmm.
Like we could be happy that we are actually seeing someone else who is enduring these things and
Yeah.
surviving and learning how to thrive through
Yeah.
it. Like,
I
but
love how they think about, or I love how she kind of puts together riotous and refrain, like music, and just thinking about like that communion and the role that music plays and rhythm and sonic sound plays in Black communities, Black women's organizing. And hearing it, it feels like you can hear joy, like you can, in your
yeah,
you sing it. So yeah.
it's I mean, music is a healing practice. It's healing.
Mhm.
It take also is like it's mesmerizing in that it takes you to a different place, like
Mhm.
a different time, a
Yeah.
different space, right?
Mhm.
It changes thoughts, thought patterns. Like it could
Yeah.
like on a like psychological but also neurological level, like
Yeah.
in the body,
Yep.
change your perspective, period.
Mhm.
In a moment, in 3 minutes, right? Like and but that's also why all of these things have been like silenced and attempted to be controlled. So
Right.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay,
And
where are we? Last one, right?
yes.
Okay, cool. So,
So the last one is called The Chorus Opens the Way. And I can read the quote that's there. So on page 348, um, it speaks about, well, I'll just read it. So Hartman ends with an ode to the wayward, the women, girls, and queer radicals who open the way to seeing the revolution not as the stories of the great man or tragic hero, but as the collective struggle of the Black women and girls who were meant to be forgotten.
mm,
Um, so the first question related to this, um, as how does the historical forgetting or ordinary, wayward, mediocre Black girls and women inform the way we read ordinary Black girl representations and how we interact with ordinary girls in our daily lives?
Mm-hmm.
Ain't nobody ordinary. That's what it teaches me. We're all
Absolutely.
wayward.
Girl,
Yes.
we're quirky, we got our things. But I think when I thought about this question, uh, we were coming off the heels of reading about like Queenie and Such a Fun Age. And what was that other one that we read where the girl was just kind of basic, but like, and I just thought how much like some of us may have like cringed or maybe had some reservations about them being so kind of basic and mundane. I mean, even just that whole skit on Black Lady Sketch Show, it was called like the bad bitch support group or whatever. And I felt so it made me feel bad because it was just like I know it was funny, but the one of the characters was like, there was this girl, I saw her the other day and she walked out without any eyelashes or anything. And I just felt like she must have been so relieved because she didn't have to live up to like, and I was like, girl, I don't know. Like that's me. That's me. They was basically just saying like, the basic bitches have it easy and it must be really easy for them and freeing for them. But I guess it is because I mean, it's not a whole lot of pressure, to have, a contour and whatever. And so I think that sometimes because we don't I think it's just we're used to Black girls in certain spaces, maybe not all Black girls, right? Because obviously there are girls who are like, whatever. And I think it's hard for us to not see Black girls winning and being high achievers or, and it's like, but maybe I think sometimes maybe I mean, maybe because maybe I am trying to read on like, what about the girls who do they nails real nice and like have all the, whatever, the blinged out nails, or the girls who had their edges laid, like, but those are still kind of ways in which we try to produce exceptionalism. And just what about the girls who are just like
But what
plain
about the girls who
Jane?
get their nails done just because they're just trying to feel good? Like,
Yeah,
I think it's about like rethinking how we have like, you know, framed these things.
yeah.
Like, but I also get what you're saying, like the ordinary. Like, what if the
Mhm,
ordinary is extraordinary? What if it
mhm.
is like what if it just means that you have taken yourself back from this society that has told you that you're supposed to perform and behave in a particular way?
Yeah,
And so yeah, I think black women and girls existing just as black women and girls is exceptional
yeah. Because
because the
it's the
world,
context we have to exist within. It's just
yes, yes. So however you show up is exceptional, regardless.
right, right.
Yeah. So I don't
Mhm.
know, like it's so I mean, I love this book because like I think about these things all the time, how I uphold certain standards while also disrupting them.
Mhm.
Like, you know, and I don't know, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, girl. It's
Like,
but
and even I'm thinking about like Alicia Keys, for example, like deciding not to wear makeup
oh,
anymore.
yeah.
And like, I remember seeing when that first happened, somebody posting about it, like, and saying like some people have to wear makeup. Like some people
Mhm.
like feel like in order to show up in the world, they have to. They don't look like you. They don't
Right.
have clear skin when
And they
they.
don't have access to all of the tools like somebody, I mean, going to the dermatologist, first of all, if you have insurance, is considered a special, like sometimes
Yes.
specialty doctor.
Mhm.
Right? And the fact that you have access, this is why I was like the other day, I was thinking about this Alicia Keys example, and I'm like, but Alicia Keys has access to all the dermatologists, all the skin pills, all the different procedures and different things like that. So yes, you could you could definitely wear your bare face and but I think that when we think of those things as a revolutionary act without digging deeper to ask questions about like how does somebody, what are the like conditions for which somebody is able to do that?
Mhm.
You know, like it's never just at the surface, or I think taking it at face value is I think a thing we have to be really careful about.
I don't know. I
You got
can't see it. The
to
sound is like blocking my the SBG
you put
booklet
it up.
thing. Oh, oh! I quoted it. Let me take a picture.
You gotta
Say the chat.
screenshot. I'm gonna leave it up there so you can go back and screenshot.
But yeah, I don't know. I even think about like natural hair, and things like that. Like particularly at like for someone, um, and just like even skin, like as someone with a chronic illness that I like my hair thins, my hair falls out. I used to have like long
Mhm,
curly hair, gone,
mhm.
like gone. You hear me? Like, and so, and then skin, like I have really bad dry, like psoriasis and act and Lord, I can't even talk, eczema, and it's
Yeah.
due to medication. So, like,
Mhm.
if we think about the intersections of like, like these social identities and of ourselves and how that impacts like how we show up too. So
Mhm.
certain things I do to cover up as well, like to
Mhm.
not necessarily show like certain parts of me, but I'm also just showing up. And as I stated, like showing up is exceptional. Like just
Yeah.
being here and
Mhm.
existing is an important feat. Like so
Mhm.
um mm,
Yeah.
okay. Which section were we on?
It says
Oh, go ahead.
in what ways have you been rewarded or benefited from forgetting, ignoring, and shaming Black girls and women who do not live up to societal expectations of respectability or adhering to those notions of respectability yourself? Um, this one had me feeling like, maybe a little bit of survivor's remorse, because I know that I used to get messages about how I wasn't like them fast ass girls, and how that was a avenue for people to pour into me in ways that they didn't always pour into girls who were going against the grain. And so I've definitely known myself to be a beneficiary of, even if it wasn't intentional, of what happens when we have respectable Black girls who are high achieving, who do all the who follow all the rules, and how that's juxtaposed against other girls, and it in some cases takes away the care and the resources that we can pour into all Black girls, and that we should be pouring into all Black girls. But it's like I was the easy one, or you don't resist, you follow all the rules, so we don't have to always beg you. And and I see that being a way that plays out so much is even with the students that we work with, like, is the ones who are, troublesome or hard to communicate with or whatever. Those are the ones that we don't put a lot of energy in. They don't get requested to come to or to be represented when they have, like, when they bring speakers to campus or whatever, and they want students to come meet the speakers. They usually pick the girls who are, the ones who are high achieving, super involved, and doing all the right things. And it's like, but wouldn't these wayward girls also benefit? Or what happens when they get to interact? Maybe they aren't gonna necessarily sell the school or be representative in the way that we want them to be. But how is that? But that's still a part of the school, right? That's still a part of what we would
They're
consider
part of
the
that
Black
community.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
see,
so,
unlike you, I was the I was the one that was
Mhm.
like always. So I went for so when I was younger, I was actually, like I don't like using the term anymore, but tomboy, so like I
Mhm.
was kind of outcast because of that. But then like
Mhm.
I kind of flipped, like it flipped, and then I was like the fast tail girl,
Mhm.
and now I'm still like the oh here she come, like, and I feel like people we also have to talk about like complexion in the role of like how it plays a role in ideas of respectability because
Mhm.
it's always assumed that I am like this super like calm,
Mhm.
shy, quiet, contained person, and I am not
You be like, turn
whatsoever.
up.
What? Turn it. Where we going? We going? You coming? And then
Right.
it's like, oh, I forgot she was from Detroit or something. But
Mhm.
like that's
Mhm.
also like a problem because
Yeah,
Detroit is like this vast place. Like
it really is.
whatever. But yeah, like it's very interesting to me. Like,
Yeah.
but what's also interesting, so you mentioned that you kind of were nurtured in a particular
Mhm.
way, and I was not, but we
Mm.
ended up in the same place.
Okay.
Literally.
Wow.
You feel me?
Yep.
Like, so it doesn't it like, and I'll be honest, somebody did decide to nurture me, but they accepted me for all that I am. And
Mm.
I
Mhm.
and that did assist me in getting where I am, you
Yeah.
know. And so I think this is a testimony to it demonstrates that regardless,
Mhm.
like of how other people view you, the possibilities are endless,
Yeah.
like so for me, for someone like me, it's like I'm gonna and I do know you do as well, like you show up as
Mhm.
your full self,
Yeah.
right? And and I think that's important
Mhm.
because we're
Yeah.
here.
Right. And I think it's important to always in to move away from this notion that we're taking a chance on certain people because it's like I think it's such a capitalist language of like if we take a chance and invest, then we may see, the fruits. And sometimes we tend to invest in what's easier, what's less risky, right? When, as you just stated, we can still end up in the same way. So like
Mhm.
trying to say like, what if we poured into all of our black girls, right? Without all of these conditions, um, what would
Yeah,
happen?
I'm just letting you know my computer's about to die.
Oh, okay.
And the
So
charger is like far
it's
away.
gone. So do you want to, if you want to answer this last question,
Yeah, we could try, and if I fall off,
if you
bye
fall off,
y'all. I
okay.
probably feel it's on 1%. So,
Oh my God, that is so stressful. Okay. Given all that Hartman has presented to us about the beauty that lies in the unseen and forgotten, imagine applying Hartman's methods to our 21st century landscape. What experiments and freedom would you capture? Who would be included in your archive of freedom experiments and why? Um, I don't know. I think given so right now we're reading a lot on like anti-fat bias in my office and fat phobia and I think that I would think about that discourse and the community of fat black women or just fat women in general as being part of this conversation that we need to have around like bodies and what bodies are valued in this society. I definitely see the folks who are trying to talk about rest and things like that as another kind of conversation around freedom. So Nicole is gone. Oh, you came back. Um, so yeah. Um, what other things would I include in that archive? The folks who are having conversation, I mean, we read this earlier this year. Not this year. I think, was that our first year? Wow, this is our third year. We've been talking about pleasure activism. And really, that whole book is, I think, a really good foray into the ways that Black and queer, folks are trying to practice freedom, through sex work, through care work, through drug use. And so all of those things are, I think, a part of that larger archive that we have. So, and I would just encourage people to just think about like your own feeds and what conversations are out there and things that are making you maybe uncomfortable, because I think whatever makes us uncomfortable, I think that is a part of the sort of wayward archive that we need to create and construct for ourselves and really dig into. So yeah, so it looked like Nicole was back. She's there, but it's frozen. But anywho, this concludes our conversation on Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. We have some other conversations coming up on our reads for January. I know we're also starting another exploration track reading, so please join in for those. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you all have a great night and Happy New Year. All right, talk to y'all later.